Hey, it's Mirna from Trainer's Toolbox. Welcome to the Trainer's Toolbox podcast, a place where you can discover practical and effective tools and tips to make your workshops more insightful, engaging, and memorable. You are at the right place if you're looking to become the best trainer you can be and design truly impactful learning experiences. Ready? Let's dive in. If there is one superpower that every trainer wants, it's to manage the group energy well. Why? Well, it gives you three huge gifts. First of all, if the energy is high, it's prime state for learning. In other words, you know that participants can sustain focus, that they can be engaged, that they have actually the energy to go full into the activities you design, that they have energy for their brain to truly process all the learning. So, number one, learning. Number two, it also means they will really enjoy your workshop. It means they'll, enjoy this energetic process and that they'll enjoy really feeling good about the things that you're doing. So in some way, they will actually get more enjoyment, they'll actually get more fun out of the workshop. And number three, you will have the tools to actually deal with any challenges that arise in terms of energy. Maybe your participants are all partying the night before, maybe you're having an early morning or late evening workshop, or maybe there is just that natural energy dip that happens throughout the day, for example after lunch, and you know how to deal with it. That's why today I hope to share with you some practical, diverse tips that you can truly use and leverage already in your next workshop to maintain and sustain the energy high. Now, I want to be very clear from the beginning. I'm not sharing a specific energizer, a specific activity. This is what you should do. No, I'm zooming out a little bit and I'm sharing more on the side of approach and principles you want to keep in mind. And each of these 6 approaches or principles I share can be seen as a bit of a toolbox, and that toolbox contains many specific ways and tools that you can implement that. But we really want to go from understanding how energy works, what influences energy of the group and of the participants, and only then how can we actually put that in practice. Now, as usually, I'm covering a lot and unpacking a lot in one episode, so I do want to remind you, you can download 1-page brief summary of the episode, which is never 1 page, probably like 3-4 pages, but it's more like the visuals from the episode and some of the main points and reflection questions, so you can easily go back to it, remind yourself what do you want to implement, or actually stop and reflect for it. Now, first principle we should always keep in mind when we think, are my participants really energized? Are they stepping into the workshop with a lot of energy? Is the principle of relevance. In other words, do they feel that this is actually relevant for them? Without this, they won't have energy because they won't have motivation, they won't really care about your workshop. So how do you actually build relevance, sense of relevance in a workshop? Well, hopefully your participants already might know why this topic is relevant for them, especially if they signed up on their own. But here are 3 things you want to do to make sure it's bulletproof, that they truly feel that they're in a place that's relevant for them. Number 1, you want to share clear, relevant goal, and you want to communicate it with participants early in the workshop. Here is what you will learn. Here is what you will discover today. Here is the goal of our time spent together. And you want to make it very practical and to the point. The goal is not the same as just the name of the topic. It's really what will they gain, what will they conquer, what will they live with, what will they know, what will they be able to apply or understand deeply after your workshop. Number 2, you want to share practical things early, relevant practical bits early. So in some way, you want to incorporate really early in your agenda different bits and pieces that will make your participants feel like this topic is relevant for them. For example, maybe you slip in a short story or a tool, a short, really impactful, relevant tool, really early, even before explaining all of the agenda or before sharing deeper what will this be about, but just really slipping in a bit that will demonstrate that practical value in practice, not just in theory, that they'll be able to experience right away and feel like, oh, this was useful, this was valuable. You want to slip in that really early. And then the third thing to build relevance is also to build that early impression. And this is what you can gain more through your agenda and announcing the topic more and sharing what the bits are. But also, this is what you're truly building by the impression that you leave as a trainer. Like, hey, they have some credibility, they have something to share. I like their approach. They seem to be giving value fast and a lot, and they have value to give. So this early impression, it has to do with perception of me as a trainer, but also perception of what will the workshop be about when we enter into that a bit deeper than just the goal. So like the agenda, what will we cover, managing expectations in some ways. So these three things, ideally, you want to bring them together. Each of them is really useful on their own to build sense of relevance, but together they really have a big impact. So sharing clear and relevant goal early. Goal needs to be relevant for their work or real life. Sharing a short, practical bit, tip, tool, bit of knowledge, something that will demonstrate the value early, and then also showing that value early through that early impression of how you approach the workshop and how you manage and announce agenda, expectation, and everything else to make sure that that sounds relevant, that it gives a relevant impression. Now, if you set this foundation right, you already won a huge battle for energy, because when people feel things are important for them, when people feel things are relevant, and this will give them value in their life, they will work on sustaining their own energy and they will be highly motivated. Now, another thing that ties in very closely into energy, and it's really powerful, is the emotions. Emotions is what really drives energy. I don't have the same energy if I'm angry, if I'm sad, if I'm curious, if I'm bored, or if I'm enthusiastic, right? So we really want to be mindful. Which kind of energy do we want, and which emotions do we need to actually build and sustain that energy? Now, one thing you need to know about emotions is really their relationship with energy. Emotions can be split in 4 categories, and they can be split based on their valence, which is basically, do we enjoy them or not? Are they pleasant or unpleasant? And then the second dimension on which we can split them is, are they actually activating our energy? Do they call us for action, boosting our energy? Or are they deactivating in terms of energy? Are they quietening us down and, wanting us retrieve? And then based on these 2 criteria, we can basically get 4 groups of emotions. One of them, everybody's favorite, is high performance emotions. That's the highly pleasant and highly activating emotions. So those that come with positive valence and with high energy. And that's things like enthusiasm, courage, excitement, astonished, sense of wonder, eagerness, confidence, joy, these kind of emotions, right? And I think these are the ones that every trainer often wants in their workshop, and they really pull the energy forward and pull it high. But then we also have negative emotions or unpleasant emotions with high activation. That's like anger, feeling maybe afraid, anxious, defensive, defiant, spiteful, maybe worried, disgusted, many of these. And these are some that overall we don't really want in a workshop often, but sometimes a small bit of something like this, like when people feel challenged or frustrated, that might be a good spike to actually boost their energy. I talk about emotions a lot in Build Emotional Journey course, and also in one of the other podcast episodes. Can't remember the exact number now, but I will link it at the end of this episode, and I will also link it in the episode description if you want to dive deeper into the emotions, because it's a huge topic that influences a lot in terms of learning, not just the energy. But the important thing to be aware of is, don't always shy away also from uncomfortable emotions, because sometimes they can actually give good energy and valuable energy, although you want to be very mindful of where you plug them into your workshop and how they work with all of the flow of the workshop. And then we have emotions that promote lower energy, and that can be negative emotions such as feeling sad, lonely, depressed, hopeless, defeated, impatient. These are corner of energy that are uncomfortable, unpleasant, and deactivating, and we call them a burnout corner, and we don't really want them in our workshop. These are the ones that we really want to avoid. But then we also have a low energy, low activation emotions that are pleasant, like sense of inspiration, but the quiet kind, when we sit and dream, or sense of connection with someone else, but again, deep, calm sense of connection, sense of feeling maybe even challenged or engaged, but in this more peaceful way, where we are just serene, peaceful. We have sense of letting go. We feel reflective. We feel like a little bit introverted, pulling inwards maybe. And this is your renewal corner. And this is actually a really important corner to include in our workshops, because it is one where people have actually chance for integration. And if you never involve this corner, if you always push for high energy emotions, you will tire people out. So in terms of emotions, what we want to have, we really want to have 3 principles of 3 things to keep in mind to make sure that emotions support the energy in optimal way. One is we want to have more pleasant emotions than unpleasant ones. So we want to have more of these pleasant emotions where people actually can enjoy than unpleasant. That doesn't mean there is no space for unpleasant, because in a way there are some meaningful ways to bring in unpleasant emotions as well, but we want to have more pleasant than unpleasant. Then we want to have intensity of emotions that's actually moderate, because even though to a trainer it might seem fun to have like this really energetic group, but think, high intensity of energy is not good for focus, for processing, for really deep learning. So we might want to have high spike of energy for a moment, because we bring in energizing activity or people got really engaged. But if we have high energy activities throughout, it's going to be draining and there will be no time for processing and integration. So overall, we want to have moderate intensity of emotions and moderate height of how energetic the process is. And then the third thing that we really want to have is variety. So we want to have variety of emotions. So in a way, we think of emotions as a flow. That's why also the course I'm doing, it's called Build Emotional Journeys or Design Emotional Journeys, because it's kind of journey with many ups and downs and turns. And that's what we want to have in emotions. We don't want to have the one perfect emotion that we then run throughout the workshop as the one thing forever, flat and always the same, always same level of energy, always same level of emotion. Of course not. We want to have this meaningful ups and downs and variety. A lot of pleasant, occasional spike of something a bit stressful, or where we push them a bit out of a comfort zone, or maybe a bit frustrating because they are not managing to resolve it easily. And then overall, we want to have quieter, calmer moments when they can process and integrate, especially for introverts, but for everyone as a meaningful part of learning. And then we don't want to stay with that slow, calm energy too long, because then it quiets down too much and it's hard to pull it back up. We really want to think in these ups and downs. And to create those ups and downs in energy, emotion is your guide. Emotion is what will navigate that and drive the energy and pull it in. So emotions are your absolute best, most powerful toolbox to actually drive the energy. And here are some of the best emotions that you can integrate in your workshop. It's sense of curiosity, sense of pride, sense of connection, and sometimes a bit of challenge or a bit of frustration. So these are some of the best ones. Interested, curious, proud of their achievement, satisfied with what they created, connected with the topic, with the trainer, with others. Sense of belonging is also really useful one often. But the idea is that there shouldn't be a single flavor of emotions. There should be this variety. Now, one more thing. Well, actually, if you want to dive deeper into the emotions, definitely consider joining me on Build Emotional Journeys course. It's 3 modules online course where we go really deep into this and really, really highly practical, looking how you can apply it in your own sessions with many practical tools and tips. But I'm also doing a shorter masterclass if you're not ready to dive in that deep on the emotions. So check for both in the description of this episode. It's one of my favorite topics because I feel it's one of the most powerful topics in training and too often overlooked of all the nuances of how we can think about emotion. Now, here is another thing you need to know about energy in training. It starts from you. What do I mean here? Well, your energy, your presence, and your self-regulation in terms of emotions and energy is one of the most important things that shapes energy in the room. I'll repeat that. Your energy, your presence, and your ability to regulate your own energy and emotions. It's one of the most important shapers of energy in the room. And I don't know if you knew this, but emotions are actually highly contagious and energy follows emotions. And they start to transfer from most expressive person in the room, and then the most expressive person in the room transfers the emotions to others or in a conversation. And you having the spotlight as a trainer, very often your emotions and energy will have extra power to be transferred to others. And probably as a trainer or facilitator, you're also fairly expressive. And this will mean that energy and emotion that you bring in really multiplies in the group. So you want to be really mindful of that. And here are some ways that can help you manage that, manage your energy and your emotion. One is to be more aware of your drainers and fillers, what help you sustain your energy and what drains your energy, and to see how can you manage them better in life in general and especially in the workshop. To use breath to get grounded at the start and at the breaks, and maybe even during the workshop. To be mindful to breathe deep and slow and not be speedy with that and not get in this action mode too fast. Another thing that can be really powerful is to do self-check-ins. That is an exercise that I shared quite deeply in episode 19 of the podcast, so you can go check it there. I will link it at the end of this one and in the description. But self-check-ins are basically ways of checking in with ourselves. How do I actually feel right now? And what do I need to manage and what do I need to keep my energy going? This is a really powerful way, getting in habit of doing more check-ins, really powerful way to sustain your energy and to know how to recharge and to become more aware of your patterns related to energy and emotion. So highly recommended as one of the best exercises in self-regulation to pick up. And then the last thing you need to be aware, even though you're leading the energy of the group, you cannot just lead by, bringing in any energy you want, because then you could also lose the rapport and the connection with the group. So you really want to be mindful as you're leading them into some new energy level that you're bringing in. You want to be really mindful that you also meet them where you are. I'll give you an example. Imagine we have a group that's on a bit lower energy level. They're not very low, but they're like, 4. They're kind of calm, mindful, they're okay, not like sleepy, but they're not like super energetic. And you want to make this workshop really energetic. You think it's important for your goal and for your learning and so on. So you come in and you're like energy 9, woo, jumping in like, yeah, let's do this. What will happen? You will lose them because you're too far away. It's like shouting at them, come here from a couple kilometers down the road. You're too far away for them to connect with you, to relate. So what you need to do instead is you need to enter the situation with the energy that is quite similar to their energy, that's quite resonating, but maybe a little bit higher, like 5 or 6. So you come in, you embody their calm, quiet, grounded energy, but you maybe keep it a bit higher through your voice and through body language. But not like, ooh, super high, but a level higher than them. You connect with them, you build a bit of that rapport, you build a bit of that sense of belonging with the group. And then slowly and gradually, as they reach your level, you will notice that soon because they'll be picking up from you, then you can take them higher and higher and higher, one step at a time. So think of it really like if you would want to bring someone to a specific place in terms of energy, you need to meet them where they are, hold their hand, of course not literally speaking, hold their hand and bring them one step up and then another, show them the next step and bring them to the next step up. And you're leading the way, but you're never more than one step ahead of them. That's the way to lead the energy of the group somewhere else. I hope you will give it a test. I hope you will try it. And I want to share with you number 4, toolbox number 4, or principle or group of things number 4 that we can use. And that is body and movement. One of your best, most powerful toolboxes. Okay, to be fair, we can't always use it. That's why we talk about 6 toolboxes today. So you don't have to use all of them every time. But it is one that is really, really powerful and that is really, really lacking in so many workshops. So you really want to think how to use it. Now, first thing to understand is some numbers. Do you know how many minutes focused adult who is trying actually can sustain their attention? I don't know if you're here optimistic or pessimistic, but here's what the research says: 14 to 19 minutes. It depends a bit on cultural background. I'm sure it depends also on the specific adult and how they train their brain. But let's say the research says it's 14 to 19 minutes that we can sustain attention. Now, what does that say for our workshops? It says that every 14 minutes their attention drifts away, right? And we need to bring it back. And every 40 minutes, and that's an optimistic scenario, that's the maximum, every 14 minutes they lose a little bit from something that we said. Now, this is something that we hugely want to keep in mind in our training design. We talk a lot about that on Train the Trainer and on any course that I do that is related to training design, like I'm preparing the advanced bootcamp on training design. This will for sure be one of the topics. How do we deal with the fact that people lose bits and that they're not plugged in permanently in our workshop, but they come and go in terms of their attention? But the second number you should know is 20. 20 is the number of minutes that we can sit before our brain actually drops in terms of oxygen, and that means also in terms of processing. And now imagine all the workshops and all the conferences, and how much do we sit? Is it ever shorter than 20 minutes? Of course not. That is where body and movement comes in. It can also be a place where a bit of breath and breathing exercises, if they suit your content and style and the group, can also come in. But it is also something where we can hugely implement movement. Now here, with movement, it's much easier to use movement in a physical training room, of course, but even there I feel it's heavily underused. So I would say we can really think from perspective, how can we use movement in physical training room? In 2 ways, implicit and explicit. Explicit being, hey guys, stand up and stretch a bit. Implicit, which I like much more because I feel it's less disruptive, incorporated in activities. Hey, let's get up and put this post-it there. Let's work in pairs, stand up while you're working in pairs and walk around. Let's do small groups. For small groups, go there to that corner and work there. So kind of incorporating it in a very natural way that it's not disruptive, but it actually marks meaningful transition within our topics and agenda and subtopics, and it's very integrated. So this is a great question to reflect on. Where can you incorporate more of implicit movement in your workshop, and if that doesn't work, also add a bit of explicit. Now in virtual it becomes a whole different game. It's much tougher to incorporate implicit. Sometimes you can do it like inviting them for walk and talk in small groups and so on, but it can be more disruptive. So in virtual I would be more in favor of considering where do we need to move more, where do we need to incorporate more explicit movement, and maybe also do we need more breaks, and how are we going to break this up, and or parts where we invite people to stand up and so on and so on. Now body and movement is not only about movement, it's also about the body. So maintaining and sustaining the body basics with looking to include enough of breaks, seek to encourage people to move or go outside in the breaks, trying to incorporate a little bit longer lunch breaks and shorten the food part so people can actually go for a walk as well, ensuring nourishing food and also different ways of snacks and coffee and ways that people can fuel physically. And one really helpful thing is also the lights. Seeking to work in spaces where we have a lot of daylight will be really helpful in terms of body for the energy. Okay. Now, we still have 2 toolboxes to cover. I hope you're still with me. Now, the next toolbox to keep the energy going, and don't worry, I'll summarize them at the end. The next toolbox is, are they actually motivated? Motivation is really the force behind the energy. You can see it also as connected to emotions, which we talk about, and connected to relevance as well. But this is really about, are people actually motivated to learn this? Because if yes, they will invest more energy in going with it. Now, let's be 100% clear. Motivation is not enough. You can have the most motivated person in the room, but they can still struggle because they're tired, they're sleepy, the process is flat and not very exciting, or maybe they don't see the relevance. Well, all motivation and relevance are usually connected, so maybe that's a less of a blind spot. But maybe they're also struggle to sustain their attention because maybe the way that the process or the content is presented is in very big chunks. So people can struggle to sustain their emotion and energy and attention even if they're motivated. However, having them motivated will hugely help you to actually sustain that energy because they'll work with you. You won't have to pull them and convince them and take them on a ride. They will willingly want to serve that energy wave with you. Now, in terms of motivation, there are really many models that are really useful models, but being very aware that I'm already overwhelming you a little bit with too many things to think about and too many options to explore, I'll share with you a very simple one, and that's the Dan Pink's model, where he basically drills down the motivation to 3 key factors: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So if you already think in your workshop, how am I incorporating these 3, this will already be huge for energy in your workshop. And even if you're already incorporating these well, if you think, how can I incorporate them even more, that will still be a big boost for energy in your workshop, especially if you have a lower energy bit. So we want to especially think about this right after lunch, or at the beginning if it's an early morning workshop, or at the end if it's an evening workshop. So we want to also think about this not as only throughout the whole workshop, but also in a very specific bits of our workshop. Now, how can we as trainers think about autonomy, mastery, and purpose? Well, for autonomy, you really want to think, how can I give them more ownership and choice? For number 2, for mastery, you really want to think, how can I give them sense that they're advancing? So that's related to giving them sense of accomplishment, sense of success within the workshop, a sense of pride, which we're mentioning already, and just building that sense that they're actually learning and advancing. And then finally, for purpose, we want to really show the goal early, we talked about that already in relevance, but we also want to keep reconnecting with that goal. How is this activity related to our goal? What will you gain from this specific discussion that is related to our goal, and so on? So keep reconnecting with the purpose. Now, this is a great moment to take a little pause and actually reflect on these 3. How are you building more autonomy, more mastery, and more purpose? So more ownership, more sense of advancement and accomplishment, and more connection with the goal throughout your workshop. I hope you're still with me and not overwhelmed with this amount of ideas. I know in podcast, one thing that can be really challenging is I throw a lot at you, a lot of ideas, a lot of food for reflection, a lot of things that can be challenging to implement. That's why if you really want to strengthen your fundamentals of how you design and deliver workshops, or you really want to reach the next level in your facilitation, you don't need just these insights, you also need to really implement them and put them in practice. I want to encourage you to create that space for yourself, but I also want to invite you to join me in some of the spaces where I'm creating that rich, deep, practical learning experience for you. One of these places is Train the Trainer, a place where we cover all the aspects of successful, impactful, memorable workshop or course or any other learning experience design and delivery, where you really nail the basics and where you really become more aware of strengths and gaps in your practice. Train the Trainer is built for new trainer and so we start from the very beginning and go very deep though. But it is very appropriate for experienced trainer as well, who wants to strengthen the foundation, uncover any gaps. If you started your career as a trainer or facilitator by jumping straight into action and through experience with without filling in your knowledge on some of the bits, it's very likely you have some of the gaps in your practice, and Train the Trainer is there to cover it. On the other hand, on advanced facilitation training, which is built for experienced trainers and facilitators, and it's a 2-day immersive, intense, live learning experience. On that one, we cover many different aspects of how to make facilitation deeper, more insightful, more impactful, more engaging, and energy management is definitely one of them. So if one of these 2 learning experiences resonate with you, if you'd like to put all the things we're mentioning here much more into practice, truly implement them in your workshops or facilitation, these might be 2 places to come and join me and learn with me. I'm linking both into the description of this episode, but I also want to invite you to get in touch, connect on LinkedIn. It would be great to connect there anyway, or email me. You can do that through the newsletter or through contact form on the Trainers Toolbox website. And let me know you're thinking what might be your next steps, you're looking into how to develop to a next level, and I'll be happy to work out with you which learning experience might be the best for you specifically and really help you get there. Now, with that, let's share number 6. Our toolbox number 6 is maybe one of the most practical, most to the point, get it done, always use it. It is basically to measure their energy. Okay, I'll be honest, I use this one much more in virtual than in physical training rooms, and I'll share with you some ways of how I'm doing it. So let's say that all 5 tips that I covered until now were based on you building the right environment for people to sustain high energy, and also on you reading the room, understanding, do they have high energy? Should I boost them more? Should I provide more space to calm it down, and so on? But that always comes with a bit of guessing. So why not being more explicit about it and actually asking them, how is your energy? How is it going? Now, here are the spaces where I do that. I do it almost always in the check-in. So in check-in, there'll always be some format of how are you doing? How is your energy? I seek to make check-in also topic related and relevant, that we already warm up for the topic and start thinking about the topic with some meaningful question. But I always incorporate in it, especially if we're a smaller group, but in general as well, I always seek to incorporate also how are you actually doing, how is your energy, mood, focus for today, because I really want to know that and work with that instead of against that. But there are also many other ways that we can measure it in physical room and in virtual. Let me share about physical first. Here is one example of energy barometer that we used in one of the workshops, and it's very simple, brutal, and even a bit ugly, but it's also very effective. So for this specific barometer, we basically had energy levels 1 to 10, and we just had hours of the workshop for a full day live workshop. And as you can see, we had a couple of participants that came very, very tired. No, 2 of them. Took them a bit of time to pick it up. And we had one after lunch dip that was or 2 that were very brutal. But that's something that sometimes you cannot fully avoid, and it's really important to be aware of that. So it was really helpful to know at the beginning there are a few people who feel like that, and to really kind of guide them somewhere out of that. Now, the way I measured this energy in this energy barometer, and by the way, if you're just listening to the podcast and not on YouTube, it's basically just 2 axes, where on vertical one, it's numbers 1 to 10 for energy, and on horizontal, it's different points in the day in terms of hours. And then people just put a little sticker or a sign with marker on where are they right now for each of the hours. And we do that throughout the day. Now, one interesting advantage of this kind of barometer is that you actually also can make people move by asking them to stand up and mark their energy. Another thing is that it also makes them more self-aware that they're tired and what do they need, and tackling that. And another thing is you can also, with this, go quite individually or quite generally as the group. So here are a couple of considerations about measuring energy, and you can measure it in different ways, and I'll name quite a few tools, but first I want to clarify how you could use them and why would you use them. First thing you want to do, if you use any sort of energy barometer, the drawn, the physical, the written in chat, whatever, what you want to do is you want to use the same one consistently, because The most important moment to measure the energy is probably the beginning and asking them what they came with, because there you have least information, right? It's hardest to assess. Later, as you know them more, it's easier to assess. So maybe that's the most important thing. But ideally, you want to measure it consistently, because that way you will see some surprises, and you especially want to measure it in crucial bits. I'll give you an example. It is not very relevant to measure energy right before the break or right before small group work or breakouts, because the energy will change through that activity. It is more relevant to measure it after that activity, as they're plugging back into maybe a plenary space and so on, where you now are going to manage the energy and you need to be mindful, is it low or high? So pick the points when you're going to measure it a bit strategically. Good point would be also when you're wondering, do they need a break, or are they up for an extensive activity, or should you shorten it a bit? So if you have a decision to make, that's a good point to measure. Now, apart from wanting to measure it intentionally and throughout, like consistently, you also want to be intentional about, are you measuring it anonymously or not? If you measure it anonymously, you can expect more honesty. If you don't measure anonymously, it will give you much more insights into what happened for different people, and even opportunity to approach them individually if you feel like somebody is like all the time low, and asking how can you help them and so on. So there are advantages to both. I prefer to do it name related, because I feel it's not very valuable, hidden vulnerable information, and we usually have quite high trust as I work with small groups and usually over a longer period of time. So I choose to measure it with a name, but I would say anonymously sometimes can be really helpful, especially if you don't have a strong rapport with the group yet, and if the group is a bit more reluctant. And then the second thing, you can also use this measurement as data, so you can use it as real life data to actually manage energy in the moment, but you can also use it as a data after the workshop to actually go back to it and then review what happened and how does it relate to your design and your activities, and what should you be mindful of the next time. So with that in mind, that will be also your learning tool. You can measure it in physical workshop with the barometer like the one I show, where you can use the stickers in different colors if you want to color code people, or markers in different colors if you want to color code people so you know who is who and which trajectory belongs to whom. Or you can also just use the same colors of markers for everyone, where they just mark their little X on the spot, and you don't know who is who. You will also get much more honest results if you ask people first to take a nice deep breath and take a moment to recognize what is their energy level, and then stand up and mark it on the board. Then if they all just go and mark it on the board, because then they're more inclined, they'll stick with the crowd, right? So if honesty is important, precision is important, keep that in mind. A really cool way of measuring it on the workshop itself is also physically. You can ask them to show by hand, like this is really, really high, low hand is like on the floor, it's like they're dead, and then just using that consistently, or by show of fingers between 1 and 10, what is their energy right now. In virtual, I would suggest using chat or some sort of visual slider. Like you could use a slide with the slider, being it that you use Miro or you use slides or any sort of whiteboard. You could always pull up that same slider template. Menti as well could work for that. And you could ask them to use stamps or different little dots, depends which tool you use, to mark where are they. And then you could also have these slides captured so you can also review it later. I really like check-ins for online. If you don't have many people, you could also use the 10 fingers on the camera. For me, check-ins in chat work really well. Hey, just number 1 to 10, where are you with energy? No questions asked, 1 to 10, 1 to 10. And having these numbers will actually then make it really easier for me to recognize when I need to do something differently. So do I need to do an extra break? Do I need to shake up activity a little bit, make it more active or calmer or shorter or anything else? Or maybe introduce a bit more of movement. This will be kind of feedback and hint for me. I think on energy management, that is really more or less everything, even though we can play with many many other tools here as well. I do want to invite you, if energy management topic is interesting for you, to also check episode 6. I shared there many tips on managing participants' energy. So I will also link that one in the description. I cannot link it at the end of the video because we can only link 2 there, and I already mentioned also the emotions and the self-check-in. So look for them into the description this time, because not all of them will be linked in the end of the video. Now, episode 6 will also be very insightful for you how to approach your own recharge and not just the participants' energy and the participants' recharge. Now, finally, as I shared many tips as always, I do want to give you a quick summary of what are the main things you want to keep in mind, and I want to invite you here to reflect actively. What is one thing you will try in your workshop, in your next workshop already, to support the group energy? Please also remember to share this episode with somebody who could benefit of it, to give it a quick like if you feel you learned something out of it, or maybe to subscribe for Trainer's Toolbox channel if you want to be up to date with future episodes. There are many cool topics coming up. Now, energy management, as we said, is strongly influenced by number 1, relevance, making it relevant in terms of goal, quick relevant tool, early impression, how this will actually be important for them. Second, highly influenced by emotions. Third, highly influenced by your energy. Fourth, body and movement are some of your best tools which you shouldn't miss, and at the same time you might want to incorporate more and use more to manage energy. 5, motivation. You want to make sure you use autonomy, mastery, and purpose, so ownership, sense of advancement, and a clear goal to build motivation. And then finally, measuring the energy a little bit more consistently, so you gain immediate insights how to manage it, but also insights you can learn from. Now, do use these more, experiment with them, think which of these you could be using more, even if you're using it already, or which of these could you experiment with if you never used it. And definitely let me know if you have some thoughts, feedback, ideas for future episodes. Finally, I'm also linking the ebook on emotions in training at the end of this episode. I think it will be super interesting for you to also check it out, to dive deep into the emotion side of things. I hope to see you also on some of the Trainer's Toolbox courses, Train the Trainer, or bootcamps on facilitation, or maybe building emotional journey to strengthen those skills in a practical way together with a small group of experienced trainers, and really boost the way your workshops create impact. Wish you an amazing day. See you soon. Bye. Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found some exciting ideas and valuable tools that you will use already today. Remember, they only work if you put them in practice, but then they make all the difference. If you enjoy Trainer's Toolbox podcast, do leave a rating and review. It does mean a lot. And if you haven't done it yet, click on the links in the episode descriptions and discover free materials and valuable resources to dive in deeper. See you in the next episode or at Trainer's Toolbox newsletter.